winners, and welcome to Two for the Win with your hosts, Nick and Will. Have you wondered about traveling for wellness? Well, if you have, we have the perfect expert to share some thoughts on that. But before we introduce our special guest, please be sure you subscribe, share, and follow Two for the Win on your favorite platform, including YouTube. And also want to give a shout out to Nick Menard and Associates of Dream Vacations for sponsoring today's episode. Thank you, Nick Menard.
You're very welcome. Hello, Will. Hello, winners.
Hello. So we are wanderlusting now with a little twist about travel that I think is going to really resonate with people about wellness. Would you like to give a introduction of our special guest to our audience?
Absolutely. So there's so much to say about our guest today, so I'm very excited. But I will do a short introduction and then I will let her, introduce herself even better. So our guest today is a Florida licensed psychologist, sought-after speaker, podcast host, and group practice owner with a deep passion for supporting emotional wellness across the lifespan. She specializes in working with children, teens, and young adults, providing individual therapy grounded in empathy, clinical insight, and evidence-based practices. It's my pleasure to introduce to you all Dr. Lindsay Frey. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And that was a really nice introduction. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So as mentioned, tell us more, because I know you have so many different specialties that we could find, based on, talking to you a little bit, and also LinkedIn. No, I'm not going to lie. And so I want you to explain exactly what you're doing and your passion and everything like that.
Yes. So I am a licensed clinical psychologist. My primary job is that I see children, adolescents, and adults for therapy and psychological evaluations in my private practice in Tampa, Florida. And so I opened a group practice in 2023. So I also have 4 therapists that work underneath me as well. So that keeps me really busy. I love what I do. I always wanted to be a therapist, and I'm still loving it after, I think, 16 years now. So that I've been doing it. So it's great. So that's my primary job. If you want to know more, I have a podcast. It's called Mental Health Without Borders, the Global Wellness Podcast that I launched in 2025, where I'm talking with therapists around the globe on mental health and wellness in their specific area, which has just been really exciting and interesting. And I've actually even got to meet some of the podcast guests as well in those countries. I just recently met someone from Scotland that I had on the podcast, which was really exciting. And then outside of that, I'm building international wellness retreats that come from my love of travel, because travel is so important to me for my own self-care and my balance, perspective, stress management. There's a whole lot of benefits that we can talk about, but it really is important to me. And so I am building wellness retreats that are immersive. And so what that means is you'll come and we will do trainings on the 5 pillars of wellness while we're also enacting that on the trip. So for example, like a physical wellness day, we would be doing something physical. A social wellness day, we would be doing something social. So we are going to be learning about it. We're going to be putting together some kind of plan that people can take with them when they go back home, so that they don't have to struggle so much with burnout and they can just be well. So both the amazing part of the travel and the trip, but then also the plan, the wellness plan that they'll take back home with them. And then we'll follow up with them to make sure that is being maintained. And so those are kind of my 3 things that I am loving right now in life that I'm putting together. And so that's kind of the short part of it.
No, this is great. I love it. I mean, we connected I think a year ago or so through a connection we have in common, and then I follow your journey on social media, and it's amazing to see all the places you go and the people you meet, like you mentioned. And it's very interesting. That's why, usually on Wanderlust Wednesday, we talk about destinations, cities, countries, vendors, like cruising, landing, everything. But I think it's very important to talk about this subject because so many people use, like you, travel as a method of relaxation and just put the phone on silence or off completely for a certain period of time, which is really hard for us entrepreneurs like yourselves. And so can you tell us a little bit more about maybe what's coming next? I know you may not have something specific to share, but maybe what are your plans for your next retreat, and what kind of people would benefit from this?
Right, absolutely. And so our very first retreat that we're launching is going to be for professionals that are facing burnout. And so we're going to make it small. I really want it to be kind of like a boutique retreat where there's 8 to 12 people. We'll have about 4 leaders going to. We're looking at 2 different locations, actually. So we were initially going with Greece. We've had some interesting things come up that made us kind of shift to Scotland. And so I went to Scotland last year. I fell in love with the location, and it kind of jumped the line potentially ahead of Greece. So that would be hopefully in the next 6 to 8 months, as we're hoping to launch in the fall, our very first one to Scotland. But we're just kind of ironing out some of the details. But it's going to be for professionals facing burnout. And the first one is going to be for women only. And so we're going to have women helpers. We're going to be women on the retreat. And so it could be therapists, but it could also be other wellness professionals. I was initially going to work with therapists because that's what I do. However, I had a lot of requests from people that were teachers and nurses and doctors asking if they could come too. I even had a principal that said, hey, I could really benefit from a retreat like this. So because of the interest, we want to open our doors a little bit more. And so we have so many ideas on where we want to take this. We want to do potentially couples. We want to do, men and women. There's so many different things that we have in mind. But our first one really is going to be focusing on the 5 pillars of wellness and professionals facing burnout, particularly probably in the health and wellness field, along with a couple others. But it's going to be a 5-day, 4-night trip to Scotland. This location that we're looking at is absolutely stunningly beautiful. It feels like you're in a fairy tale. I mean, you just see green, there's horses and cows around. They have these amazing excursions that you can go to nearby. And it's literally one of the most beautiful places I've ever walked in. It's stunning. And so I want the place that we go to be so incredibly beautiful and charming and relaxing in and of itself that you feel like you don't have to do anything, because the goal is not for it to be a tourist trip, even though we will do a couple excursions that are based on the culture of the area. But the goal is for wellness and relaxation. So just to come to a beautiful place and be able to just be and kind of reconnect with yourself again. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Wow. The hard part, I think, will be to keep it under 12 because based on what you said, the demand will be very, very high. And but you're probably right. It's better to have like a smaller group and have more intentional kind of conversations, and then to have a large group and then maybe losing the purpose of it. But fantastic. Can you share with us, for if not, it's okay, but where in Scotland are you, not the location, but the city maybe, are you looking at?
Oh, the city that we're looking at? The city is outside of Stonehaven, between Glasgow and Stonehaven. So I honestly don't even know what this city is.
That's great. I know that area.
Yeah, it's a stunningly beautiful house. It's called the Kinclune House. They just opened up last year, so it's brand new, renovated as well. I mean, again, it's stunning. The lady that owns this property is absolutely wonderful and accommodating as well. They have this huge room where you can do yoga, or you can do stretching, and you can do activities. And then each room is just immaculate. And you look out these windows and you see the green and the countryside and nature. And nature in itself has such healing benefits anyways, and I don't think that we get out enough in nature, even though I'm in Florida still. People laugh and joke all the time about how we never make it to the beach, even though we live 15 minutes away from there. Although I do my best, for that. But when I was there, I flew into Edinburgh, and then I went, it was about an hour away from that. Mm-hmm.
Great. I love it. I love it. I love Scotland. I do a lot with a travel agency, like a group. Of course, it's not at all the same thing as you're gonna do, but like touristic group between Scotland and Ireland. And that was one of the highlights. I know we shared that on the podcast last year. What the highlight of the year was literally Ireland and Scotland. That's where I had the most customer going on group trip in those countries. So totally get it.
It's so charming. And I think one of the best things about it was the people, which is also another one of my favorite reasons why I travel is I love meeting people from different cultures. And they were so kind and so welcoming in all the cities that I went to, that I just really fell in love with it more than I expected to. And there's just something about it that's so calming, and their way of life outside of the city is a lot slower than ours, which is also really nice for people that are from the US to just go and slow down. And then in Greece, we're looking at Aegina. So there's an island that's right
Mm.
off of Athens. It's about 45 minutes. And the reason why I chose it is because there's a lot of touristy islands that people have been to. And if they're there and they want to go, they can go. Like they can contact a travel agent like you, and then they can go and do some of those things. But this is such a small island. I think they said they only have 15,000 people living on it in the wintertime. And we would be looking at a September, October again for Greece potentially next year. So there's such a local charm about it. And that's, again, my goal is to get away from the city, away from the tourism, where you really feel like you're immersed in the local culture is what I'm hoping for.
Love it.
Yeah, no, that sounds phenomenal. And I think, we had an episode about a month ago, Lindsay, where we were talking about the need for people to be maybe a little more intentional about why they travel. And, that was one of the things when we were chatting that really struck me is how you're very intentional with your travel and tying it to wellness, right? And I think that's something that sometimes people maybe don't consider as deeply. So if you don't mind, like, can you maybe expound upon that more? Like, what do you see? Obviously you're interacting with people every day, trying to help them and guide, and where it does come up where it's relevant, like with recommending travel, like why is that so important, do you think, to foster wellness?
I think it's so important. And I don't think that you really can understand it until you do it, right? So if you guys have traveled, really you don't understand until you go. And so just when I grew up, that we didn't have a lot of money until I was maybe in my teen years. My dad started a business, and that's when we started traveling as a family. And so even from then, I could see how it would bring us together from our busy lives. I could see everybody kind of shift in their stress levels, getting to know different people and, like I said, different cultures. And we went to, I remember the island of Dominica when I was younger, and just being able to see how people live. There's no tourism there. Well, there wasn't at the time, at least. And we stayed with locals, and we got to do local things, like go tour a waterfall, but like just with a local guy named Moses with like long, dreads. And it wasn't any kind of tour. And it was just magical to me, And so as I got older, there was a huge span of time where I couldn't travel very much. When I was in graduate school, I was getting my doctorate degree for 10 years. And so it took me a little bit of time. But then when I was in my 30s and I started my private practice, I was able to start traveling again. And I noticed a huge benefit for myself. I've never been materialistic because, like I said, I grew up with not having a lot of money. We never had name brand clothes. And so when we were able to travel, because that's what my parents would do, they would save up their money and then we would take a cruise and we'd have an amazing experience. Then we'd have it again next year, like one a year kind of thing. But I saw for myself how much it helped me, and it helped me to come back completely refreshed. It helped me to have a different perspective. It's like taking a step back away from everything. I would find that my brain would go into creativity mode. It's like I see things differently. I'm able to be creative. I'm more social, interestingly, because I do so much for my job as far as interacting with people all day that I'm sometimes shut down when I go home and I don't really want to talk to people. And on the weekends, I'm pretty kept to myself. But when I travel, I just open up. I'm talking to everybody and anyone I could possibly talk to, and I'm asking questions, and I'm inquisitive. And so for me, I have to plan it. I have a business coach and I have an accountant that knows how important it is to me. So we literally set aside a budget every year for me to travel. And the nice thing about creating wellness retreats is that I can actually travel for work as a write-off too as well now, which is great because I'm researching places that we can go. But materials have never brought that same joy to me in my life. They just haven't. Like clothes and shoes, and I'm just not that kind of woman. But when I travel, the benefits stay with me. So I might take this incredible trip to, we went to Greece and Italy in October, and then went to Scotland in November, but it just stays with you. So I look back at my pictures and I remember what I felt when I was in that moment. I remember this person that I met and this conversation that I had. So I make sure I always bring a journal, because my ideas just start flowing and flowing and flowing. I mean, ideas for business, ideas for life. So I just see this complete openness, for myself when I travel, and the stress relief. So it's just incredibly important to me. And I know now in my life, once I get really, really bogged down, and I'm busy for a long time, I go, I have to take a trip. I have to. It sounds like a privilege in a way, but it's not. The way that I do things is pretty reasonable. I like to travel a lot in the off seasons. I actually don't travel very much in the summer because it's the most expensive time to travel. I'm always looking for flight budgets. I have credit cards that give me points for flights and points for cars and points for stays. I have a Marriott Bonvoy member. I'm like platinum. And so I almost always have free stays. And so people, I think, have that misunderstanding that it has to be expensive and you're privileged to do it. But no, I mean, I went to Italy for 10 days and spent no more than $1,000. And it was Rome, Venice, Florence, doing some of the most amazing things, but it was less than $1,000. So I do smart travel, and again, I travel in the shoulder seasons as well. And I meet people almost every single time I do, who I can then stay with or hang out with, or then they can take me around locally, so I always meet people, kind of, collect these different connections across the globe, which also helps. So I found how beneficial it is for me. So I absolutely prioritize it in my life.
Oh, that's phenomenal and very wholesome in that regard. And one of the things I was thinking about is you're sharing that experience is, as social media has become obviously more prevalent, and even media like this, right, with podcasts. I read recently, I won't say it's like an epidemic, but the rise in people feeling lonely, which is strange to think about in a way when we can easily interact digitally as well as we do. And when you're sharing about and I could totally relate, I get to the end of the day, I've been talking all day. I don't want to be necessarily talking to anybody else. I just need to veg out. But when you travel, you have that almost liberation, and now you're interacting with all sorts of people and connecting with people on a human level in person, which actually, in this article, they were talking about how that can help stem, you know, uh, things like depression and anxiety in a way because they're fostering more of that human connection, and you could do that through travel.
Hmm. Yes. And I think too, if you can't do something big, you could do something local. Sometimes it's just changing your environment. So it could be something where, hey, you know what? I live in Florida. I'll just go to the other side of Florida for a couple days, or be a tourist in your own town. But I think too, sometimes you can get it even from just changing your environment. So I think for people that don't feel like I can, or I don't have the time, or I don't have the finances, or some of those other benefits, then you can still do it in your town. You can still do it close to your town. So I think it's important to at least try. I think it's important to try and see what those benefits could be for you, because you could be really surprised. Like you said, it's shocking. I mean, I don't know if this sounds bad about me, but my office manager went with me when we went to Italy. She helps me run the whole office. We went to Italy and Greece together, and she was like, "You're a different person." And I told her that. I said, "You're going to meet a different person." And it's not that I'm not that way. It's just when I'm work, I'm all work. I'm very type A. I have a lot that I need to do each day. I have a lot I need to manage, and I'm a single mom on top of that. And so there's just a lot facing me every day. So it's really hard, to kind of get into that kind of space, in my day-to-day life. And so, yeah, she saw me as open and free and talking, just really joyful, and also grateful. I just become super, super grateful to be able to do it. I'm grateful for where we live. There's a lot of gratitude that comes with it too. And seeing the other cultures is really great. And I know that I've talked to you about this, I think, Will, but I've tried to pass that on to my son too. And I've seen the
Mhm.
benefits for him. My son's 13, single mom. So I'm trying to take him to all 50 states by the time he's 18. He's done 42, which is pretty
Wow.
good. And then we're going to Montana and Idaho in Wyoming for spring break in a couple weeks. So he'll be up to 44. So I think we'll meet our goal, which I'm excited about. But I see it with him. He starts saying, he's like, Mom, we need to take a trip. School's been a lot lately. I'm like, all right, bud, and he feels the same, but he loves it. He loves seeing the cultures. He loves getting to see all these different destinations and just kind of seeing how big and open the world is. And I think that's something too for me is that we get so tunnel vision into our problems in our world. And then when we go, life is so big, it's so much bigger than us. There's so much more going on than our stuff in front of us. So I can kind of minimize that too, I think.
Yeah, that's amazing to think about. 13 and
That's
almost
crazy.
at 44 states. I mean, there's some people who go their entire lifetimes and maybe only do one. They don't really go out the place they're born in.
Yeah.
I know so many people like that. That's crazy. I'm from Europe and I moved here 12 years ago. I'm at 21 states and I feel and when I talk to people, I said I didn't do half of that. And they're locals, like in the 50s. But yeah, so I love that. And I want to piggyback on something you said earlier about the fact that you're not materialistic and that you love more the experience. And that's something I couldn't agree more. Usually people, when they are younger, they start making money, they spend it for, like you said, clothes, brand clothes, shoes, watches, and stuff like that. I'm not saying it's not good, but I always said, I rarely meet someone at the end of their life who talking about the car they're driving, the place they're staying, all the clothes they have. They always talk about experiences as people they met in their life. And I think that's where you start shifting your mindset into, well, experiences, that's travel. That's a lot about traveling. And like you said, meeting new people, new culture, new environments, like seeing what other people are doing. When I went to Africa a few times when I was living in Europe, that was eye-opening because that's totally a different style of living that they have. And but they are happy. They are happier than most people and they have nothing because it's just a way of living. And so when you visit those places, you realize how lucky you are or grateful you should be about your life. And also, I want to travel more, and that's why I start traveling more and more. And then I realize why not building a travel agency so I can share, my knowledge about the travel that's in the different destination I've been to and then growing from there. But I couldn't agree more. Experience you take with you, the rest not. And so I love that about your what you're saying. I wanna ask now about your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you started like last year you mentioned. What is the expectation for someone's listening here too for the win and said, oh, I want to check Dr. Lindsay's podcast. Can you tell us more about what can they expect when they listen to your episodes?
Yes. And so I think this actually, it's a nice transition in a way from what we're talking about with people that can or cannot travel, because something I thought about when I was visiting a location a few years ago was that, yes, like some people are not able to do it and they also don't even know about the different cultures. And so I was curious, when I started the podcast, I was just curious when I go to Italy, what are their mental health struggles? When I go to a place like Scotland, what are their mental health struggles? I just don't know. I know what ours are, right? I'm a specialist here, but I don't know. And so I really kind of set out to interview people about, okay, so what is going on in Italy? Also, what's special about your culture and what do you do differently than we do? And what is your wellness like? What are your wellness practices like? And so I think to listen to it is, number one, you get to learn about that culture. Again, if you can't visit or you're curious about it, you get to learn about it. Right? I have an episode of Saudi Arabia. Like, listen to that to learn more about Saudi Arabia. I've got a South Korea episode. So that was really great. Now, in the person that I interviewed in South Korea, he is originally from the States, and he's lived in South Korea for a few years now. So he has a really nice dual perspective as well. And just, just about the culture, the differences, the similarities. And And so I think number one, you're learning about the culture, that you're hearing about. And I definitely have it separated from the different regions. But then also you're hearing about some of the struggles that they have. Sometimes even that in itself gives us perspective, because there's a lot of mental health struggles, and there's a lot of mental health stigma out there around the world. So some people, it's literally dangerous for them to walk into a mental health facility. They could lose their job. They could have shame on their families. And so things like virtual has saved their lives, So anybody that's interested in mental health, kind of hearing about the mental health perspective around the world, I always try to ask the therapist some practical tips for people that are listening. So if you listen to all the episodes, you are going to get a lot of tips about mental health. You're going to get a lot of tips about how to be healthy and well as well. And some of the things I've taken and incorporated in my own life, and so honestly, even my own practice. And so the end of the podcast, the beginning is usually asking therapists about their specialties. The middle is really talking about the culture of where they're coming from. And the end of it is talking about wellness. So what are the wellness practices in your culture? And then what are some of the things that you incorporate as well in your daily life? So I think if anyone's interested in hearing about the culture, hearing some mental health tips for free, which is nice without even seeing a therapist, and then also hearing about wellness practices, that would be for you. So it can be professionals that are interested in kind of sharpening their skills, even learning more about the cultures in which, people are coming from. Because in the U.S., we experience a lot of those cultures here. We experience people from a lot of these different places. So having some of that background can be helpful. But I think anybody can take something away from it, which I think is really great and really helpful, because I wanted to make something that's useful. And it came out of a curiosity. I've learned so much about the culture, so much about the people I'm working with, so much about different perspectives. I have one episode that was from someone who used to live in Japan. His name's Tony Parmeter. And he lives back in the States, but he does fly fishing EMDR. So fly fishing trauma therapy, primarily with men. So he has this travel van. He meets them there. There's an office inside the van if there's a weather issue, but then they'll go fly fishing and talk about their trauma at the same time, because the water is very healing. That's an amazing episode, right? And it's hey, if you want to go do that kind of therapy, you talk to Tony. He's in the States, but he also gives this other international perspective. So I'm learning about what other people are doing too in the mental health space, which is fantastic, because talk therapy is not for everybody, And so even the therapist from Italy, she does walk and talk therapy. So she does more nature-based therapy, so sometimes she has clients in the office, but sometimes she'll meet them at a park and they'll just walk and talk and do therapy that way. So I think some people in the States are starting to catch up to some of these other ways to do therapy. But I think it's really interesting for people to hear about that too. If this is not the right kind of therapy for you, there's other kinds out there. So you can learn a lot, from the podcast.
Wow, that's super intriguing, and please look in the description, winners, and you will see the podcast of Dr. Lindsay there. So feel free to click and just to pick an episode, because it's very intriguing and very interesting. That's very different than what you can expect, because you have such a large panel of people that you interview around the world, which is pretty different. I love that. I do have one last question, and then I give it to Will, of course. Is on a personal note, you travel to so many different places. I know it's a hard question because I cannot answer it for myself, but what is the one destination that was mind-blowing for the location, the people you met, or maybe the one location that stay on top of your best places that you ever visited?
I have favorites that I've gone back to several times, but the one that blew me away was Norway. Norway was amazing. So I flew into Oslo, but I went to Summerøy, which is the tippy top of Norway, and I went February 2024. And so it was the peak Northern Lights month. And so we saw the Northern Lights almost every single evening. It was so stunning during the evening because of the northern lights, but it was equally amazing during the day. We went to like reindeer races. There was like reindeer all over the place. We went and did some amazing excursions, but the landscape and the people were incredible. And I was on a therapist retreat when I did that, and I gave myself a couple days in the beginning and the end to myself. So the last day I did they have this thing where they do spas on old ships, like very old ships. So there was an entire spa there. And you get into the hot tub and you jump off of the boat into the water, which again is February. So it was maybe 10 degrees outside. And you do this crazy cold plunge, which I encouraged multiple people. I kind of peer pressured multiple people to do because I already had done a cold plunge and saw the benefits of it. But that place, Norway, seeing these animals walk around I would never see here, the people, how calming, how beautiful. It was stunning. So I would say if anyone can go to Norway in February, it was the most amazing experience of my life by far, and I cannot wait to go back. I'm also curious about seeing it in the summertime as well, just because everything goes from white to green. It was covered in snow when we were there. So I also want to see it in the summertime too. But Norway was stunning. It literally felt like you're, again, in some kind of fairy tale magic land. It did not seem like this is a place where people just live every single day.
Outstanding. Very different. I love it. Go ahead, Will, because
Yeah, no, I was just going to say the same, but I have to say, like, if anything taught me, like this recent cold spell we had in Florida, I don't know if I could do the cold plunge in Norway in February like that. I was having a tough enough time when I was in the 40s.
Amazing. Yeah, you just get out and you put your 4 layers back on. It was literally like 4 layers every day. But other than that,
I'm
it was
shivering just thinking
incredible.
about it.
The
Everything
release
sounds
that you get,
fascinating, except that one's giving me little shivers, I have to admit.
you'd love it. You would love it. I did it
I see.
twice.
See, she did
I did it one time in the freezing water, and then I did it a second time in the freezing water. So you'll love it.
Really?
Yes.
No,
Yeah,
hats
it's
off
just
to you.
it's
Like,
euphoric.
mass props.
They
Yeah.
they don't drink coffee. They don't drink coffee. They jump in the cold water in the mornings. That's crazy.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I'm sure I would be majorly alert after that. Like, there's no doubt about that. Like, my
Right. Like
senses would
forever.
be yeah.
maybe you need to do that to put all your thoughts together once.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, well, you know what? Maybe. Well, I tell you what, if I do it, Dr. Lindsay, you'll be one of the first I tell. So, there you go.
Yes. Please, I'll go.
Awesome. Well, time flies always when we're having fun, but what an awesome conversation. So thank you for joining and sharing your story with our listeners. And again, like Nick mentioned earlier, please check the description. You can find a link to Lindsay's podcast and really think about, some of the things that she shared today and the benefits, wellness benefits of traveling, in addition to the other benefits that you would get from it, and including the human connection. So thank you for your time today, Dr. Lindsay, and thank you, Wanderlusters and Winders, for choosing today's episode. Be sure to follow us on your favorite platform. And again, thanks to Nick Menard and Dream Vacations, Nick Menard and Associates with Dream Vacations for sponsoring today's episode. We'll see you next week, everyone. Take care.
Bye, winners.